Hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Bitz and Chitz with me, Chitz, and my co-host Bitz, or as he's more commonly known, Reaver. We have been rocked in the Chaos Dwarf world since we last spoke to you by our first official plastic minis release since 1994's monopose plastic Chaos Dwarf Warriors in the form of the Blood Bowl team. Which is fantastic news for everyone and has cheered up lots of people in the community. And as a result, as the schedule of contests marches ever further forward with some amazing prizes, the contest that is coming up next is the Artisans contest, which is the contest that showcases the things we love here on Bitz and Chitz, which is to say kit bashing and all of the work that comes with sculpting. Artisans is really about taking a concept and going in your own direction with it. So when we encourage people to vote, we encourage them not to vote on painted entries, not to vote on the quality of painting. And also we allow people to submit unpainted entries, which have won plenty of times in the past, because the focus with the Artisans contest is very much on the craft of creating something. And from that perspective, the theme that's been chosen for this contest is quite exciting. Obviously, Reaver's the Don when it comes to the world of contests. So if you'd share with us, Reaver, what went into it, what the contest is like, and where we're going with it this time, then that would be great. And also, especially if you could tell us all what the prizes are going to be as well.
Alrighty, yeah. So this is another, I think, a good, exciting contest. In contrast to the Golden Hat, this one, in fact, is open to 2D art as well, which is another staple of the Artisans contest. Some are often focused solely on 2D art, but we've kind of been opening up to completely open format and allowing kit bashing, drawings, art, and probably if you can name something else that isn't explicitly listed, I'm probably just going to say yes to that. So we're trying to open this up. We know we have so many people in the forum who have all kinds of adjacent side hobbies to the Warhammer space. So yeah, if you can dream it, that's what we're looking for here. Now this specific one, like you were mentioning, the Blood Bowl, the kind of genesis of this contest was the Flamesmith. It was a new add, as far as I'm aware, to Blood Bowl rosters, and something that even people who are looking to revisit old rule sets for Blood Bowl, or bring their old Blood Bowl force into the new edition, might want to create their own Flamesmith instead of just buying one. So that's kind of the origin of the contest, and we wanted to make sure we expanded it so any other systems are welcome as well. And it's not just a Blood Bowl contest. So we kind of broadened the theme a bit to be Artisans' shitty sorcerers, as some people have called it. So really trying to focus on what could be like potential pitfalls of Hashut's gifts. That's the goal of it. We want people to kind of exercise their creativity in what they think a sorcerer would be, and even go as far as like dioramas or whatever you would want to enter that is related to sorcerers, their apprentices, underlings, familiars, smelly underlings, whatever you can think of.
Indeed, and I think the new Blood Bowl kit gives us a lot of options in the world of smundlings. But a couple of things just to say about where we kind of got the idea from. I think it's a mix of the two things. Thing number one is everyone knows that sorcerers are essential for almost every square-based game that you play in the fantasy setting. That's fine, no matter whether you're a Kings of War person or whatever. But Old World in particular has made it incredibly clear that magic is a battle swinging thing to do. And so lots of people on the forum have been thinking about how they need or want to make new sorcerers anyway. And in addition to that, what we have with the Blood Bowl team is these hilarious fire-breathing, potion-drinking Chaos Dwarfs, one of whom has his finger outstretched, asking you to pause for a second while he swallows this potent brew before he spews it out all over his unfortunate victim. And that just kind of inspired us to think about all of the terrible level 1 and level 2 wizards that a good army needs. What is a demon smith, really? It's just a dwarf with disregard for his own personal safety in many ways. But looking beyond those two potion drinkers, you also in the set, pretty much every Chaos Dwarf in that set has open hands. And open hands are just an invitation, not just to being painted up like a wizard. You could field one of these as a wizard completely vanilla, but you can put all sorts of staves and magical items and head swaps and all sorts of things onto those bodies and have a really ornate, gilded, armored Chaos Dwarf Sorcerer in a very vintage 90s style, because everything about the kit, which I have with me, that they've gone for is smack dab in that 90s look, with the possible exception of the Hobgrot hats. But let's face it, that's not the most important thing in the world. So if you were looking for inspiration, then we definitely think that that plastic kit is a good thing to go for. There are a couple of other things that came out alongside it that you would have seen. Specifically, there's 3 Forge World resin kits. There's Hathark Zarg Mad Eye with the pressure gauge equipped blunderbuss firing an American football, which is a pretty unique sentence, and some new bull centaurs as well. We're kind of not so focused on those, but they've got such a fantastic vintage look that I'm very sure that they may well come to star in a contest in the near future. But yeah, that's a good place to start. But really, just as we have done with contests in the past, we wanted to spend some time just talking to you about all the different options that you have, or where to get started, things that you could use as a base, things that you could adapt for your Artisan's entry, or things to get inspiration from. And so, as ever, we've done our Bitz research all across the internet. And we've both got lists of things that we would recommend. Reaver, where would you like to start?
I think I'd like to start with Mom Minis. It's something that we've seen them come up, I think, a fair bit in the Discord. They've got quite a few different ranges, and in one of these will be, I think, the obvious pick, and the other maybe not so obvious. So let's start with the obvious one, the Vizier from Mom Minis. And I do own this. It has a plan that won't be making its appearance in this contest, but certainly sometime in the future, maybe perhaps with some Bodhi bits that Chitz may have sent me. I think it's a fun miniature. It works, I think, as a standalone. It could work on some kind of palanquin or whatever. He does have like a cane, so some kind of transport might be fun. I think it's a characterful piece. It's got the nice turban, ornately decorated. I really enjoy the cast of it. It's got good detail, and I'm looking forward to painting it at some point when the rest of the project kind of catches up. What do you think of this one?
He has quite a dense silhouette, hasn't he? Is that, I mean, depending on whether you choose to, is there much physical adaptation? Can you chop those hands easily, or what do you think?
I think you could do something with the hand with the flame if you wanted to do a swap there. I think because that's kind of on the standstill. I think you'd have a harder time with the other one with how close it is to the beard and everything. And the cane, you'd kind of have a hard time repurposing that because of how married in it is with his like hip and stuff. So I think you could do a hand swap on the other hand if you really wanted to.
He's on a 20, isn't he, in that picture,
Yep.
do you think?
Yeah, that's a 20. Yeah.
So you can put him on in all sorts of different situations, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think he fits comfortably on the 20. Yeah. The Mom Minis that I've found are they tend to fit that old base size. They don't necessarily need to be sized up.
Well, once upon a time, that was considered normal, but now there's dwarf size inflation and all sorts of modern controversies.
Yeah.
Is he the one that goes with the big chariot with the bulls?
It is a very similar look. They do have a couple different Vizier models, so I would definitely look through there. No, it is a different one. It's different, yeah. But yeah, so definitely Mom Minis, Viziers, a couple options there. If you the chariot is certainly something you could go straight for in this contest. We're not restricting out mounts of any kind, so. But I think either one of those is a good choice. Pretty drop in. The other guy's got a staff that you could swap for whatever very easily. He's also got a flaming hand, but yeah, they're fairly similar. I think both pretty characterful. So moving on, the other one is the Mom Minis Chaos Sorcerer, as generic a name as the Lord of Blights. So here's something you might, and I don't own this one. It's something I've kind of been looking at, but it could potentially be combined with the Vizier, and I think that would make an interesting combination. Could even be like a Astrogoth type characters. Be a little tall, but I think conceptually it fits that, you know, sorcery altered kind of locomotion mechanism. So I think that would be a fun take, and you get these two little Chaos Sorcerer dudes for the side, but they would also have use in some kind of altar if I should, or kind of as is. Kind of a fun little pair.
A very distinctive sculpt. I've never seen it before, but it fits on a 40, and yeah, it would be a lot of fun. It's also kind of something that's almost, it's kind of got a deceptive simplicity to it, right? Like there's a lot you could do with this, with even just a small amount of adaptation.
Yeah, it's a bit Zinchian in origin. It does look like the guy has three hands, one for turning the page of a book, kind of the classic Zinch sorcerer, but I think you could find use for those. Yeah, we love our thrall wizards here at Thousand Suns Dwarfs Online.
Equally, I think there's something to the Mon miniatures offer. These do not have to be Hashut worshipping classic ring-bearded Middle Eastern Chaos Dwarfs, right? They have something much more kind of 8-pointed star about the whole aesthetic. So both of those viziers have straight beards, and they actually have an Arab look to the way that they're dressed and things like that, which is why they've got those names. So yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a lot you could do with that. And equally, I think, for 80s fans, for people who want to make a Chaos Dwarf army with a twist, maybe a focus on a different God of Chaos altogether, then yeah, I think this is the right place to look.
Great. Why don't you take it away with a few?
Sure. So for me, in the Mantic episode, I pushed quite hard that there were some underappreciated minis in the Mantic range, and they were mostly characters. And so let's just revisit them as a set of 3 different things that I think aren't just good characters, but are also good platforms for adaptation. So the first one is Genna, who is the named character, Demon Smith, that they have in their Abyssal Dwarf range. He has a dragon staff in his right hand, which is a very easy. As I have this model, it's metal or metal and resin, depending on which version you get. Very easily snipped, very easily adapted. You can trim the staff down and turn it into a different object. You could trim the top off the staff and make it into a hammer. There's a lot of things you could do. And then equally, similarly, he's got a wonderful pointing hand for his left hand, which is, again, very easy to adapt. I think, if memory serves, because I have one of these, I don't think his head is a separate piece, so I think it's kind of all cast as one torso. But the work that you could do there, you have a very clear, stable, classic-looking, well-armoured Chaos Dwarf Sorcerer base that you can then adapt very flexibly. If we move on to the other wizard, the Ironcaster. The Ironcaster, again, excellent outstretched hands, flame in one hand, staff in another, classic ringlet beard, and a good helmet and all this kind of stuff. But a slightly raggedy robe with a lot of tatters and patches, which again, I think adds some charm. There's a lot you could do with that fire in his hand as a base. I think back to the classic genie sculpt of yesteryear, Reaver, and I do think that why is that little bit of flame so small when it could be so much larger? And then equally, I think a nice flexible outstretched hand with a staff in it, that's just as manipulable as we were speaking about previously. And then the last one, slightly more controversial, is the King, and it's just called the Abyssal Dwarf King as a model. It's it's the Melee Lord character, right? Heavily armored, wearing a bit of an armored suit type rig, it's not explicit, it's not out of scope. You know, he's very heavily armored, and his beard, crucially, which turns off a lot of people, is tucked inside his armor. But he has big kind of forge hammer slash wand in his outstretched right hand, and then a clenched fist in the left. I think his head is a separate piece, so that is a good platform for swapping. It's also good. One of the theme that we're going to come across is kind of proto-Astrogoth or Astrogoth adjacent concepts, where it's like he's a Chaos Dwarf, he's turned partially to stone, he needs a rig to help him get around. He does come with a tactical rock and also a little horrible monster, both of which can be entertaining to assemble. Me personally, I have mine on quite a large 25 base, which at the time was slightly annoying, but nowadays is very normal. And again, you know, I think it's something where you have like a really good body, and then you can do a lot with the arms and head to make it your own. So those are the Mantic ones that I wanted to talk about. I think I will not regale you with any further Mantic products, but I do think that if people get on the Black Friday sales, they'll see that since the launch of the Old World, quite a lot of Mantic Kings of War minis are not selling. As a result, you could very easily pick them up on clearance prices for the rest of this month. And they are regularly put on sale at other sale windows as well. So you might be able to scoop up a well-adaptable character for a relatively cheap price. But that's it for my first set. Reaver, where do you want to take us from here?
Well, just a few things on these. I know we did cover Mantic extensively, but I think as a wise Chaos Dwarf fan fiction writer once said, not much is done in Chaos Dwarf society without a bit of malevolent pointing. So I think that fits the first guy pretty well. And then, yeah, the Ironcaster, I think we talked about pretty thoroughly, but he does fit the vibe that is a tiny undercurrent for the people who care to enjoy my puns. The subject of the contest is hammer and sorcery, which is a bit of a play on sword and sorcery and that kind of era of and kind of thematics. So I think he fits that. He looks very Masters of the Universe, and I think he'd go great in the contest as is almost. So good picks from Mantic.
It's about the only good things from Mantic, but that's life. Sorry, go ahead, please. Take us to the next one.
So the next one's a bit of a one-off, or maybe a two-off, depending on how nautical you're feeling. So this one is from Spellcrow. The link I have here is at Wayland, but there's a group of 6 Spellcrow Northern Dwarfs. So these are a bit more fitting for your kind of Norskin style army, but I've used 2 of them. I did buy them individually, so I don't have the whole set, which the rest are, I'd say, more Slayer, Berserker kind of vibes. But the 2 that I like, Mr. Tentacle Arm with this like driftwood dragon sorcerer staff. I think he's the clear choice for sorcerers, but I think you do get a kind of bonus pickup here in the kit, which is dude with fish hat and fish gun, which I don't know how you could not want that. They're definitely more your typical cloth wearing. Yeah, but I think they fit, again, kind of this theme. And obviously I went for the tentacle arm. I use them both in one build for 2 guys kind of crewing a chariot, but really like the sculpts. The driftwood staff is an amazing sculpt, and yeah, I think they're just kind of fun. I appreciated them. They're a little different, maybe not something everybody's seen before. Yeah, fairly reasonably priced.
I think it takes us back to that like classic kind of pre-Hachette or extra Hachette concept that often can really be popular on CDO, is to say, this is my army, I'm taking it in my direction. And Norse dwarfs are a motif, you know. Jack's done a whole blog, right? He's got a whole army. I faced it something like 3 times on the tabletop of more kind of Arctic Realm of Chaos type looking characters. But I do think that that octopus arm is just such a statement of intent to say, do you remember the 80s? Do you remember Realm of Chaos? Have you ever seen all those weird sculpts? Well, here's like a modern version that takes it in a positive direction. And then, yeah, I think you get a lot of raw material with the rest of that set, which I think is quite positive, because, you know, this is going to open the door to some forms of collecting that, you know, bring you out of the kind of very clear Hachette ghetto that we often kind of find ourselves in, and say, now I can take an Order Dwarf collection and adapt them to look the same but evil, which I think is a fun thing to do, especially if you, you know, just want to do a second army or want to do something that takes you in a different direction.
Yeah, I think that's good for that. Definitely recommend them. I enjoyed painting them, and you can definitely seat them on in different things. And maybe taking in like a boat or something like that. You might have fun with a different play on a palanquin or maybe a land ship. I'll let you guys run with that one. Yeah, why don't you take us through a few more of yours?
Sure. So, I have spoken in the past, especially on old Brazen casts, about the Titan Forge range and how much I like some of what they used to produce. And Titan Forge have changed their range significantly. I'm not particularly sure why, but I think it's because they transitioned from making quite finicky resin kits. They just kind of did an STL design reset. And I think what they have in the Infernal Dwarfs range now is 2 resin characters that you can buy off the shelf, both of which are multi-role and could be used for a range of different things. So the first is the Prophet. And, you know, Titan Forge are very clearly making a play for classic Chaos Dwarfs. No tentacle arms here. But what you have here is a wizard who's in the middle of casting, who's conjuring this big magical snake head above himself. Now, there is a huge amount of flexibility in this, even though what you're dealing with is mostly cast resin, because what you have in those trails of smoke could be the foundation for balancing or building something on top of them that's not just a snake's head. By the same token, you can take many elements out of this. So he's carrying, you know, some magic items. He's got a little imp on the base next to him. You know, he's got quite a fulsome beard and eyebrows and all this kind of stuff. There's lots of elements on here that you can work with. But the other thing about him is, once again, this is a character that would look great on a mount because he's so big and he's in the middle of casting. He's the kind of guy that would look good on something like the Abyssal Dwarf Hellfane, for instance, right? Or some nexus of magic power. Palanquins are something that you and I think, Reaver, like a bit more than many others, because I think we're more on the creative end and less interested in the rules, and there haven't been rules for something with a kind of casting platform for a long time. But I think this is the kind of character who would look fantastic on a Taurus or on any device that you want to rule in as a Taurus, because, you know, he's got that mid-casting kind of energy going on with him. And then the other one is the Overlord. Now, the Overlord is a part of a genre of sculpts that's gotten more popular since Creative Assembly, but has never really been absent from the third-party market, and that is Astrogoth versions, right? Fundamentally, what this is a combat lord with a giant 2-handed axe, but he is on mechanical legs, and he has a battle standard bearer tier battle standard behind him. Now that immediately gives you a huge amount of flex, because you could build him through his kind of feet on a platform element. He could have a much more intricate and elaborate walker. You could completely change the things in his hands. It wouldn't be super simple surgery, but he does have a pretty good open left hand if you snip that wrist off. And the right arm, again, similarly, if you wanted to have 2 different things, then you'd have to be careful. But you could do a lot with that, I think. And especially, once again, you know, we've had some people who've taken it as far as saying that they want to convert a Dreadnought from 40k into an advanced casting platform for an Astrogoth style wizard. Now, you know that I hate 40Kification of everything, but at the same time, definitely something that big could be a really fantastic wizard on mount that you could create using this as a base.
It's a good plug there. So actually, we're not restricting Chaos Squats out of this contest either. If you're invested in the Ironhead Prospectors releases or anything of that sort, certainly Hashut or Chaos aligned squat sorcery is allowed in this contest. So yeah, don't feel like you need to be ruled out. Now that said, don't let Chitz make you think we're sponsored by Mantic, despite that, again, relentless Mantic plugging in the Titan Forge section of the Bitz cast. I do like the Snake Sorcerer Prophet. He's, yeah, I think I've liked this once I've seen it. The beard and eyebrows are super fun. Again, kind of plugging the vibe of the contest and stealing Michael's age-old idea of kind of a hookah casting, which he passed on to me and has since made it into some of my familiars units. So it's a fun idea, something I think more people should try and implement. But yeah, definitely good in motion kind of casting. I agree. More palanquins, the better. And yeah, I don't think I have too much to add on the other one, but I think this is a good one as well. I like the medallion icon on top. It's kind of got that like Dr. Eggman kind of look to it. It's pretty fun. It's a slight vibe of the old school banner aesthetic.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I think I just as a side note, GW have a rule that dwarfs don't ride things, right? That there's no such thing as dwarf cavalry. Other suppliers don't have that rule. But because GW rule sets tend to dominate, and because it's fun to make dwarfs one of their limitations being that they don't have fast attack or cavalry options, it's integral to the identity of it. One of the reasons I think the Astrogoth presentation has been so popular. One is that it has a different silhouette to the rest of the army, so it's inherently more interesting than just building yet another foot fella. But then I think the other element to it is that CA chose to make him so fast and combat capable in their video game that a lot of people now think that they should have one of those, which I'm not 100% on board with, I have to admit. But I think, you know, long may it rain. We are stuck with him now, right? Like, in one fell swoop, by making him the default legendary lord, which is what he deserved to be, I think CA have given us another 20, 30 years of Astrogoth easily. And who knows, maybe we'll even see his motifs reoccurring in the Age of Sigmar range that will get released someday.
Yeah, that's true. I'd kind of forgotten my moment of awe when you're watching the initial Chaos Dwarf trailer, and then Astrogoth is just booking it across the battlefield, just mowing people down and blowing people to the side with his blistering speed. Definitely not something I was necessarily expecting when that trailer dropped.
I think neither of us were expecting, although we dared to hope and arguably played a role in making it happen. I think neither of us dared to hope how much 90s they would drink deeply of. And I think when that happened, it changed the course of the community and the concepts that downstream, like it or not, third-party sculptors are going to be influenced by a piece of media that evocative for 15, 20 years minimum. Anyway, so those are the Titan War Games options. They are available for retail. I'm not sure if they're available as STLs, but I think they might be. I know that Titan War Games sells STLs. So those were those options. What do you want to talk about next?
I'll take it through a few of the Just for Reaver section. It's Admiralty Miniatures from Chubb's range of small scale miniatures. And these are not Chaos Dwarfs explicitly, but I've bought both of these and used them in familiars as basing decoration and War Machine scenery diorama, infinite use, and always love to plug some good 10 and 15 millimeter miniatures being brought into 28 millimeter style gaming, or whatever the scale is now, I forget. Yeah, so the first one are the Flora and Fauna trailers. Somebody please in the comments describe this name to me. These are lava platypus cows, in my opinion. and I've explicitly painted them with like kind of lava texture with like the dry brushed effect over the stone. And yeah, they're just fun little. I don't know. I picture them as like the Roombas of the Chaos Dwarfs. You know, sorcerer might have one hoovering up his ash all over his study or whatever. So I've put them on a lot of ass cannon bases in that vein. Imagine them cleaning up some things that we've probably discussed in the off topic. But yeah, that's the first one.
If anyone doesn't know, Chubb and Admiralty Miniatures, those are both members of our community, by the way. So please do ask on chat if you're interested in buying that stuff. And the web store isn't 100% accessible because it is just an Etsy store. So sometimes it can be a little bit sluggish. But if you want them, then we know the guys and we can help you get them.
The other one I wanted to highlight specifically and is a good kind of play off of the Hookah Sorcerer. These there's a few different kits, but the one that I'm bringing up here are the Shadow Storm Demons. There's also kind of a greater version of the Shadow Storm Demons. So these
they're kind of smoke, right?
Yeah, they're very very in Chubb's style of sculpting. They've got that 90s kind of smoke twirls, and it's not in the what you would call the every sorcerer needs to float era of Games Workshop type of sculpting. And they are little hands, which is kind of a fun little could be a source used for sorcerer's casting or some little demons that he has following him around. Yeah, I think it would go well with any of your various sorcerers that are casting kind of ash style magic. You could paint these however you want, of course, but I think they fit that role fairly nicely.
So interesting. One thing that, of all the things that could possibly have done this, Nurglings have really changed people's understanding of like what goes on a base. And they've added a heap of character. And I would argue that quite a lot of modern GW sculpting now is downstream of Nurglings, because I think the preoccupation that they now have with that there's a dog, you can get a dog, you've got a dog in your unit. A lot of kill teams, they've got 10 men and a dog or dog analog, right? You've got all of and a lot of things that I'm going to call a dog are not dogs biologically, but like you've got all of the little dogs that are on the bases of all of the what's the fish faction from AOS that's shit? The one that's really shit.
The I don't need these kin.
There you go. Ideneth Deepkin. And like they've got lots of weird fish things that are all floating around the base and stuff like that. And then you've got cyber mastiffs, and you've got I can't believe that I remember these words, but I'm going to say them, even though it makes me angry. Mascot gargoylians, right? Which are basically literally just GW ripping off that medieval marginalia Kickstarter and putting them into the Cities of Sigmar range. Just the most obvious rip-off you could possibly do. But then also it's because like, oh, look, he's got a dog. And it's like, on the one hand, I think it's cringe that GW keep forcing these little tiny elements down our throats. On the other hand, when you're trying to make an evocative character piece, having furniture, whether that's snotlings or a little goblin or a slave or, as you mentioned, right, kind of tortoise, platypus, lava cows, that really adds charm, and charm can be a huge element of vote winning in a contest like ours, but also just in enjoying your character from then on out. And I think, to be fair, probably nobody takes it as far as you do, Reaver, because you have whole regiments of familiars. But the anarchy of it, I think, is what makes it feel so much fun, right?
Yeah, and they never really were intended to go that far, but it was one of those, you get the ball rolling, and this was some peak COVID Discord era where people would spew ideas, and then I'd sit down in my infinite free time and make a few more, and Michael would laugh and tell me to make a hookah, and I'd sculpt a hookah and then a seahorse and like whatever. So it was a fun era. Yeah, right now I have 120 millimeter base equivalents and counting of them. And yeah, probably not stopping anytime soon the way these things go. But yeah, I think there's anywhere you look, you could find something chaotic, familiar equivalents. I think you can find some fun versions like these that aren't in the modern GW aesthetic. And yeah, I think you can really kind of run wild with familiars. And while it's not the focus of the contest explicitly, I would certainly give you a good leg up if you painted up a bunch of familiar equivalents or made some kind of fun diorama where they all seem to have like a little bit of a purpose around their sorcerer. Yeah, I think that's the plug I have for familiars.
And I think 15 mil minis, which obviously were originally intended to be used for War Master, they've become more fun as like base greebles than almost than playing actual War Master. Although War Master is a good game and is very enjoyable, I do genuinely recommend it. I've played it; it is good. The two more things that I've got to mention are both very similar to what we've just been talking about. Two sculpts from Titan War Games, not Titan Forge. Titan War Games, different company. You know, they members of our forum have worked with these in the past. There's the Pyromancer with the fire on a stick, and the kind of boxy helm, and then there is the Hazard Flamebeard Pyromancer who's holding the fire in his hand. And I'm not going to drain the slide on these. It's very similar to the reasons that I think Mantic ones we talked about are good. They are flexible, arm adaptable torsos that you could use. They are also staff wielding characters that could look good with a different staff, or could look good if you put them in a palanquin or on a casting platform. And just as a form of apologia, the only reason why I mentioned the Hellfane earlier is because the Hellfane is the best retail example of a casting platform miniature concept that is currently in the space. Equally good is the chariot that we mentioned that the viziers ride around in from Mon Miniatures over in Spain. That website can be quite hard to access, by the way. If you need help, just post. But so those are the only two things from Titan War Games. Any thoughts on those, Reaver?
I think you covered it. They're nice. You've got the two choices: flame on stick or flame in hand with crystal stick. Yeah, I think pretty classic stuff. And if you ever, they're one of those pickups that if you ever got something to supplant them in your mind as like your demon smith or your sorcerer, you could back rank them and they would be a nice piece, I think, in any infantry unit as well, whether like embedded for rules purposes or not. So there's something that I think will never go to waste and never go out of style.
Agreed. And I think they look like level 1 or 2 casters, for if that's what their purpose is going to be. They're quite lo-fi. The other thing to say about them is they're very cheap. They're about £4 each in the UK, which is pretty good. I would have to say, especially given they are quite characterful and fun. And again, I have friends who own them. I own them myself. I've played against them. They definitely look good, and they're flexible. Right? They look good in an '80s army. They look good in a '90s army. They look good in a 2000s army. They really will fit in. They are quite small. And just to move to our final point, especially to kind of seize on the Bitz and Chitz aspect, this is much more of a Bitz play, especially if you're a plastic worker. The last stuff that we wanted to talk about is GW original retail plastic. And of all the ranges in the world for it to be from, it's from Fireslayers, which is a range that isn't even popular amongst AOS players because of how monotonous it is. But despite these being my picks, Reaver, you're actually the one with genuine sculpting experience. Can you tell us a little bit about the Auric Rune Master and why it makes a good platform, what makes it look like a good model?
Yeah, so this is something I've worked with myself and seen at least 2 or 3 people on Instagram have the exact same idea. I claim no uniqueness over it. It is the move if you're looking for a sorcerer out of the Fireslayer's range. And the low effort play is cut off mohawk, put staff, fire, hat on head. Call it a day. And I think you can make a You can put anything you want on the staff, but his staff is a perfect hat, and it's got flame coming out of it. It's really just sitting right there for you. You don't even if you just like squint a little bit, you can pretty much see that. So I think it's the move there. I don't think you have too much work to do, and I found the swap to be pretty easy. Yeah, good flat cut on the bottom of the staff. That's something we talk about a lot in terms of making something into a nice hat. You can do a nice flat cut, and you're good to go.
The beard looks excellent for Chaos Dwarf work. It's probably the Fire Slayer that would need the least work to make him look good. But I do think that the Mohawk is probably the element that I would need to delete the hardest, if that makes sense. But I think also, the detachability of that beard is just incredibly valuable because God knows there's no shortage of dwarf models that have beards that just maybe aren't quite Chaos Dwarfy enough. And the ability to transplant one of those in hard plastic to the place where you need it is something that's really excellent. There are also separate beard pieces in the Blood Bowl kit. So there's now a range of options. Most of them, they do have kind of beard motion that goes with a particular body. And so that implied motion could be relatively hard to sculpt into the right context, in the same way that sometimes arm rotation can restrict what looks good. But I think in most cases, especially if you pair it with the rest of his head with enough surgery done on it, then you're in a good position because you can lay that head on top of most torsos and maybe support it with a bit of green stuff if you really need to. But he could also equally cover up quite a hacky botched job if you're putting it onto a torso where it didn't originate. Yeah, it's really good. I didn't know about this one before we did the cast, but I'm kind of pleased with it. Although I have a dim recollection we may have spoken about it once upon a time on the Brazen show, but that would have been like 3 or 4 years ago, and my attention span is not that long.
Yeah, I think the last thing I'll note on it, you'll see that two sides of the staff, there's little faces on all four sides of the staff, which becomes his hat. Obviously, there's no other choice. But two of those little faces are removable, or rather, they're their own independent bit. And I think what I did was just not glue those on the sides of the staff at all to like make it seem a bit more like linear, like a bit more hat-like instead of this perfectly round column. And you could play with that however you want, or you could. I almost felt like it was just like made it a little less busy and left some. I just put green stuff in those cavities where those faces belong, and left it flat on the side just to have kind of an open area I could just paint with a block of color instead of having to just have metal details everywhere, for example. But that kind of helped, I think, bring it a little bit back to like the Chaos Dwarf hat aesthetic. It has solid blocks of color are perfectly fine, unlike how we see every sculpt these days.
Your lack of interest in intricate metal detailing probably has something to do with why you invented an entire army of Chaos Dwarfs that use walrus bone, one of the smoothest textures that one could possibly imagine. In the snow, the smoothest base texture you could possibly imagine. However, that is not to fault your outstanding metal highlighting skills, but I think it's fair to say that you've, on some projects, done so much gilded metal and textured metal that you're probably quite sick of it. But on that note, really, we want to close out. Maybe, Jared, just one last restatement of the prizes for the contest in particular, of what people could win, just to remind them of why it's fun, and then also the timeline. Obviously, this is being recorded in mid-November, but we always give lots of time on the contest, and we usually give an extension on top of that. And so people will need time to exercise these ideas and to make their Black Friday purchases. So yeah, just give us a reminder of what people could really stand to win.
Yeah, good point. So the gold prize will be a Titan Forge blimp. So on topic for the purposes of this contest after the fact, or for the purpose of this podcast. That's courtesy of Eddie and Camdrim Skymaster. Full blimp kit. I don't know if anybody is familiar with those, but they're a bit more mechanical. The dwarf riding in it is fairly 40K-ish in my mind, but I think the blimp's a very usable very usable piece. And yeah, maybe it's not exactly a rules 1-to-1, but I think most hobbies for Chaos Dwarfs could find something to do with that. And Cam certainly found many ways to use airships in Chaos Dwarfs. So and Zanko, we have probably more airships than I have boats on this forum. So what can I say?
I mean, whoever had fun following rules as written anyway, right? There's a
Yeah.
joy that I think if you're a Chaos Dwarf fan that you get from seeing, a stat line be treated as nothing more than a stat line, and then say, so this is my Iron Demon. Yeah, it's a blimp, but good luck when it charges your front ranks. But that's probably a thematic tie onto our next show that we're going to make soon, talking all about the legacy of the Kadai Destroyer and what the future holds for it now that it's not in Old World. But that's a story for another day.
Yeah.
Just as a reminder, by the way, those contest prizes, we're not sponsored by these suppliers. Those prizes, they are provided by our members. We do offer a medal on the forum for people who've provided prizes in the past. I've been a big provider of prizes because I have too many miniatures. So if you have anything lying around that you'd love to give away, whether it's big or small, it doesn't need to be a gold medal prize. We've given away lots of single miniatures and smaller things and spare sprues as bronze and silver medals in the past, and it's always nice to have those. So if you have anything that you think you might like to contribute, please do message Reaver, myself, or any member of the mod team. Check out the forum when you have a chance, because that's where we keep all of our wonderful blogs. And hopefully we'll see you on the Discord or the Discourse sometime in the future. Anything else, Reaver?
Nope, I think we're good to go. Yeah, hope to see you guys in the contest. It closes January 9th currently, so you'll have plenty of time, like Chitz said, for those Black Friday purchases and a good month or so to paint after that. Yeah, reach out if you have any questions on that, and yeah, feel free to respond right in the thread too. So anybody who might have your same question receives the answer.
Excellent. Bye, everyone. That was all right. Gosh,
Yeah.
we always go longer than we think we will.
Seriously.